Okay, so let's have a look at what's for today. So we're on week 2, Tuesday, and I have your book summary. So if you haven't gotten the book, there's your summary for this chapter. So if you click on this, you're going to see that it talks about methods, and I kind of talked about methods last time. Okay, so what I'm going to tell you is a little more about methods this time. Okay, so returning a value, algorithm. Okay, so before I get into the methods, do you know what's an algorithm? No? Okay, it's a step-by-step instructions to solve a problem. So if you have a recipe, that's an algorithm. It doesn't have to be a formula. You can have a recipe for boiling an egg. Like, okay, I'm going to heat up the water so it boils. I'm going to put an egg in it. I'm going to let it boil for like 5 to 10 minutes, and then I'm going to take the egg out. That's it. I boiled an egg. That's an algorithm. Okay, so it's like step-by-step instructions to solve a problem. Usually the algorithms for most of the programs are you enter some information into the program. It does some thinking, like, oh, we're going to do, let's say for the room thing, we're going to enter width and height or whatever for the room. It's going to calculate something based on those two, and then it's going to show us something. Okay? So that's that. That's an algorithm. Swapping values, I'll show you that. The different kinds of variables, I showed you that last time, and a little more this time also. Final variables, scope and visibility, creating objects. Okay, so most of this stuff we already covered, right? But I'll give you a refresher. I'll go over it one more time. Okay, so this chapter is talking about methods. So if I go all the way to the top, okay, so I'm just going to go to my Sublime. Right, and this is what we had last time. So I'm just going to change the date to the 27th. Okay, so first of all, this was our room object, right, from which we can make many other rooms. And in that room object, we have a couple of things, right? We have the data items, right? So this is your width, your length, and these are just words we make up to store the information. Okay, there's different kinds of information. There's doubles, which are decimal numbers like this, right? There's integers, which are the whole numbers, okay? And this is more, if you want to look at it, it's in the previous lecture, okay? There's also characters, which are like single letters. There's strings, which is any text in quotes, like whole sentences, okay? So anyway, this is our data, the information that's going to be stored into the object itself. Right? So if you have a dog object, the dog is going to have a name, a weight, that kind of stuff, right? Different things that make sense. Okay, there was a few rules for these variables. You can't start with a number, you can't have spaces, you can't have special characters, none of that stuff is allowed. The only special character allowed is the underscore. You can't have reserved words. The reserved words are things like class, static, double, right? Specific words that have a meaning for the programming language itself. Okay? Right, and again, here you go. These are your different types. You have character, string, int, float, double. Okay, now what are methods? Methods, and that's the topic of this chapter, and I already covered it, but this chapter talks about it in a little bit more detail. Okay, so there's different kinds of methods. There's a method which lets you change values. That's a mutator method. Okay, there's a, you can have multiples of these. It doesn't have to be just one method and one name. And the names for the methods are pretty much arbitrary, something that makes sense. But make sure that your method names should not be the same as variable names. Okay? So if I have something called length, I don't want to go and have a method called length. Okay, it's just not a good idea because it wouldn't know which one's what. Okay, you also have accessor methods, which are ways for me to look at the data that's inside of the object. So what's the data of the object? Some of these variables that I have, right? Width, length, height, right? And how am I going to look at them? Using my accessor methods, right? Something that does a system out print line, maybe. Okay? Today you're going to learn how it returns a value also. Okay, other than the accessor methods, which lets you look at things, and the mutator methods, which lets you change things, you also can have just about any kind of a method you can think of. For example, last time I had a method which calculates the area of the room. Right? All you're going to do is you're going to multiply the width times the length, and you're going to show it to the user. Okay? Now, in addition to this, there are special kind of methods which have the same name, right? So the constructor is a special method that has the same name as your class. Right? So the name of my class is room, right? Room, classroom. And the name of the constructor is room also. So it has to match if you want it to be a real constructor. Okay? What's the purpose of the constructor? The purpose of the constructor is when we're going to make a new object of this room type, we're going to give it initial values. If you do not give it initial values, the default constructor of Java will do this. So you don't have to write a constructor. It will do this for you automatically. If you don't want to do that automatically, you have to write the constructor. So you have to create a method with the class name, curly brackets, and then inside here you're going to give initial values to your data. Okay? You also could have different kinds of constructors, and this is pretty much where I ended it. And I'll go over these topics, today again. So the variables that are inside the parentheses of a constructor, they're called parameters. Okay, and I'll give you some examples. So for now, let's have a look at the code here. So you have room. A room is equal to new room. A room is an instant, right? A room is an instance of the room class, right? And a room has its own variables. So I can make many rooms, and each room is going to have different properties. One is going to be this big, the other one is going to be this big. So different rooms, different variables. Okay? So when I say room, a room is equal to new room, notice this here is exactly the same as my class name. Right? This here, the name of the room, the name of the instance could be whatever I want, right? As long as it obeys the rules for the variables that I listed here. So I can name the room the same as my variables. The rules for my variables apply to anything. Okay? To method names, to variable names. Okay? So it's just basically a variable of the room type. Okay? In here, when I say a room L, what I'm doing is I'm calling this method so that I'm going to show what the values for this room are, right? The width and the length. Okay. Then after that, what I'm doing a room.area is I'm calculating what the area for this room is, and I'm going to show it to you after that. Okay. What else? A room C. What is the a room C? I'm going to change the property of this room. This room object, we're going to change its properties using the C method, which I defined right here. Right? So what is it going to do? It's just going to change the dimensions of the room by whatever. Okay? Later on, I created another mutator method, which I don't even know if I'm using anywhere. Yeah, I am using it later. Okay? So anyway, if I do this, so let's do the terminal thing again. I don't remember where did I save this. Downloads. Okay. So I'm going to go to the terminal, cd, downloads, and I'm going to do java c, room, java. If it's good, no errors, java, room. And now that runs. Okay, so let's examine what happened so far. And we want to look at, so this line right here, a room L is this one right here. So it shows you what the room length is, or the room dimensions. Then a room area calculates the area for this particular room. Then the one after that is C. So I'm changing it. There's nothing to show inside the C method. So if you look at the C here does not have a system.out println, so nothing shows when I call that method, but it has an effect on the room. And I can examine that by calling this right here, and then that shows me this piece right here. So basically I change the room, and then after that I'm going to calculate the area again, and that's going to show me this right here. So now it's a different number. Okay, so then I said, okay, well hold on, we've been working with this particular room, let me show you how to make another instance, right? And that's this right here. So B room is the instance of the room type again, okay? And by default we're going to give it the same value. So as soon as I say new room right here, this calls my default constructor. Which one is the default constructor? This one right here. Okay, the one that does not have anything in the parentheses. It's a special method with nothing in front of it that, you know, initializes the values. It gives them initial values. Okay. So this is my new room, and then I go in there. I'm going to show that new room right here. Width is 100 and 200, just like that first room, because both of these rooms were created using the default constructor. Right? Same initial size of the room based on the default constructor. Okay? I'm going to look at the room. That's this right here. That's the L. Okay? And then I'm going to calculate the area of that room, which is going to be pretty much the same thing that I calculated for the first one initially before I changed it. All right, that's this one. So now we calculated the area. Then the next step right here, B room C2. What is C2? C2 is my other mutator method, which changes the variables to something else. So these were 1.1, 2.2, now it's 3.3, 4.4. So that's what's going to be for this room. Okay, so I'm going to show that. I'm going to change the room here, and then the next line right here, L, is going to show me that I changed it to 3.3 and 4.4. Then on the line underneath it, right here, the area is going to calculate that it's a new area now. It's 3 times 3 times 4.4. It's something else. Okay? All right. So another thing that I showed here last time was your string concatenation. So these are two strings, okay? And this here is an example of string concatenation. What does it mean to do string concatenation? You have one string, you have another string, you're adding the two strings together with a plus sign. So the end result is it doesn't know how to do math with strings, but it will just put the two strings together into one big string. Okay? So that's that. And the reason I showed you this is because whenever you have a system out print line and you have a plus, that's what the plus is doing inside the system out print line. Okay, so if you go in there and you look at both is equal to Alex Starkov, that is because we showed both and then plus the next thing, which was this string here, which is a combination of two other strings. Okay, so that's an example of string concatenation. So both here, so let me put a little comment. So both is equal to this. Okay, and then I'm showing that thing right here. All right, whenever you do some kind of a math like 6 plus 5, right, it will do the math of the numbers because they're numbers. It knows how to do that. And then when I do some kind of a number plus a string, it will just put the number right next to the string, and that is what happens right here. Okay, what else? Some basic terminology. What does it mean to declare a variable? You just state what the data type of the variable is going to be. What is going to be the variable name? To initialize, that's another important term to learn, means to give an initial value to your variables. So that's why your constructors, right, like this one here, what they're doing is they're initializing variables. They're giving them initial values because I didn't give them initial values here. Not that I can't, like this one right here, I'm giving an initial value, but these other ones, they don't have an initial value, so that's the purpose of the constructor. That right here, give it some initial values. Okay, so next, I showed you example of accumulation. So accumulation means you're going to keep adding values to something. All right, so this is examples of accumulation. All right, so mathematically, this does not make a whole lot of sense. How can something be equal to itself plus 1? Well, you're not checking to see if it's equal, you're actually making it equal. Okay, that's what this here is the assignment operator. So equal right? Equal is the assignment operator. Okay, it assigns the value on the left. It could be a multiple things on the left to whatever's on the right to whatever's on the left. Okay, so what I'm saying here is I'm telling it, okay, you are equal to your old value plus 1. Okay, so the old value was what? 0. So that means this thing is 0 plus 1. When I do num is equal to 1, num is equal to plus num, it's actually going to show, oops, the first num right here, actually this one right here, is this line. Okay, then the next one right here is this line. Okay, and then keep going, go to the next one. Then I'm going to go and tell it, okay, so this one was 1. Now go and add 10 plus your old value. So that's the same as saying 1 plus 10, which is 11. And now it's going to show me 11 on the one underneath it. So that's this. Okay? Now, the last thing that I showed last time was, so up to this point, when we did rooms, they're all the same, right? Every time I make a room is the same as B room. And then later on I have to go and change it using the C methods, or C, C2, and C methods. Well, I don't have to do it that way. I can give initial values to my room through the constructor. Okay, and that's basically what this chapter gets into. Right? So this is where it starts in this chapter. So what are the values that we're going to send into the constructor? So these two values, they're called arguments. It's a specific name for the values that we send into a method or into a constructor. Okay, these two values are being received by these two variables, the first variable and the second variable. So this variable right here is equal to this value. Okay, and then the next variable, this one, is equal to this value. Okay, so I'm just sending the values over, these two variables, grab them, hold them, and we can do something with them. Okay, what am I going to do with them? I'm going to make my width and my length equal to these two variables. And again, the width and the length are just the instance variables of my room. What are the instance variables? It's a variable that is outside in the open, just like this. It's not inside of a method. Right? If I had a variable declared inside of a method, right? So local variable is a variable declared inside of a method. Okay? If I have a variable which is declared outside of a method and does not have the word static in front of it, those are called instance variables, right? So instance variables are variables declared outside of methods. Okay? Now, this one here is a class variable. What is a class variable? It's declared outside of methods, right? So I'm going to put this whole thing here. So it's declared outside of methods, and it has the word static in front of it. Okay? Now, what's the difference between this kind of a variable and this kind of a variable? Well, if I have a bunch of rooms, like here I have one room, then later on I make another room, and then later on I make a third room, each of these rooms, they have their own individual instance variables. So each room has its own dimensions. But if I have, instead of weight, why don't I change this thing to number rooms? Okay? And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to change, every time I make a room into my constructor, I'm going to say number rooms is equal to number rooms plus 1. So every time I make a room, I increase the number of the rooms. So when I have no rooms, it's 0. When I create my first room, it's going to be 1. When I create my second room, it's going to be 2. When I create my third room, it's going to be 3. And the difference is that between a static variable and an instance variable is this variable is going to belong to all the rooms. So changing it for one of these rooms as I create a room will change it for all of them. So all the rooms will know between each other how many rooms we created. Okay, so that's a static variable. It's a variable that belongs to all the instances, all the objects. Changing it for one changes it for all of them. Make sense? Okay. All right. So that's it. You have instance variables, you have class variables, and you have your local variables, variables that are defined inside of a method. Okay. In addition to these, we also have variables that are in between the parentheses of the constructor that you see here, right? Those are called parameters, right? Parameters which are in between parentheses, basically. Okay. Now, let me do another one. So we had a couple of mutator methods. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another one. This time it's going to be a mutator method that has parameters. Okay? So what I'm going to do is, okay, I'm going to say this one is void C3. And by the way, by the end of today, you're going to know what void means. Okay? So C3, let's say I'm going to say double new width. In fact, I can go in there and copy them from from here. So I don't have to type it. Copy this. All right. I'm going to paste it right in here. Paste. I'm going to copy this little comment that I had for this thing going. Copy that whole thing. And I am going to put it right in there. Like that. Okay, so I'm just shift a little bit. So these variables here, and by the way, you can have multiples. You don't have to have two. You can have one of them, right? I can just get rid of one of them, just have one. But I'm just going to stick with two for now, right? You can have 2, 3, whatever. Just make sure you separate them by commas. You give them the data type for each. Okay, so this here, the mutator method, which is going to take values, is going to work basically the same way that my constructor worked here. I'm just going to copy these two lines and look at it again here. Right? So what's happening is I'm going to send in a value using this variable. I'm going to send another value into this variable, and then I'm going to make the properties of my object equal to whatever these variables are. Okay? So let's have a look how I'm going to do this. So I already had a room called C room, right here, and I showed you C room is going to be 10 by 20, and then when I look at the room, right, it shows you that, oh well, here it is. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to change this room now again to something else. Okay, before I was changing them using C and C2, but that always changes the room to these dimensions, 1.1 by 2.2 or 3.3 by 4.4. What if I want to change it to something else? Just like I did with when I created it. I want to just send in some values and change it to those values. So I'm going to go in there, I'm going to say, all right, CRoom dot C3, and I'm going to give it two new values, let's say 30 and 40, and then I'm going to look at the room again. Okay, and by the way, what are these? These are the arguments again. This is an argument. This is also arguments, right? Which are the values we send into the method. Okay? So this value is going to be sent in and received by this variable. And by the way, I don't have to call it new width. I can call it, let's call it new W. All right? And this one is going to be new L. I just have to change these here. New W, new L. Okay, that's it. Save it. And just let me fix this back a little so it looks right. Okay, so now when I compile, I'm going to first save my program. I'm going to go back in there. I'm going to compile this thing again. Works. Run it again. And now you're going to see that what happened is I changed the room width and height. Okay? That's a method. Okay? So those are arguments and parameters, right? What are the arguments? The values we send in. What are the parameters? Parameters are the variables that accept those values. Okay? Questions? Okay. So other things that this chapter is going to tell you are, what is this business with this void stuff? Okay, so what is void? I'm going to put it on the first one. So right here, right? Void means, I'll put it capitals, means do not return a value, or do not return. Okay? What does it mean to return? Here, I'll show you. So remember how we had a method which calculates the area and shows it here? Well, I'm going to write another method. This time, I'm going to do another method to calculate and return the floor area. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this whole thing. I'll paste it under. I'm going to change my method to something else because I can't have two methods with the same name. I'm going to calculate my area, but I'm not going to show it. Okay, what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to say return area. Okay, how is that going to work? Alright, what I'm going to do is in here, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to call a method that returns a value. So in here I'm going to say, alright, hold on, what was my area? Area is, it's a double, right? So let's say I'm going to go in there, I'm going to call create a variable called double, that's the data type, and I'm going to call it A, just A. Okay, so this is declare a variable of the double type named A. Okay, so next thing I'm going to say, alright, A is equal to, and what was the name of my method? Area 2. So I'm going to go in there, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to have to use my object name again, my instance, CRoom dot, keep forgetting what it's called, area 2, I'm just going to copy it, CRoom dot area, parentheses like this. Okay, so what's going to happen here is, as soon as I call, I'm calling my method here, so, right, this is my calling the method which will return the value of variable area. Alright, so if you go in there, let's examine again. Area 2 is this, we calculate the area, then we're returning the area. So whatever this is, it calculates it, and it brings back this value, whatever that was, right in here. So this whole thing is going to be replaced by basically the variable area. Okay, and then I'm going to show it to you right here with a system. Let me just copy it from that other one that I had. This here I'm going to copy. Okay, and I'm going to show A. What is A? It's the variable. So the variable is equal to whatever the function returns, whatever the method returns, right? It's going to go into this, and then I'm going to show it to you here. There's another way to do this, and I'm going to show you both of them. So I'm going to paste that there. So instead of putting a variable here, I can also grab my method, my call, and throw it right in there. Okay, same effect. We're going to call this thing, we're going to jump to the function or the method. The method is going to do some magic, it's going to return a value, bring it back into the right inside the system out print line. So I'm going to save this, compile, whoops, incompatible, okay, good that I got that error. So it's telling me incompatible types, unexpected return value. Why is that? Because I said void, and remember I said that void means do not return. So how do I tell it to return? I'm just going to say double. That's it. Alright, save again, go back in there, compile, now it's happy, run it, there you go. So what did I do? Alright, I changed my area, I changed this thing to 30 by 40, I showed it to you, then I calculated the area using this, and I showed it to you 2 different times. Right? So that you can see that both of these are showing the same thing. Questions? Pretty basic? Alright. So this is what it means. This is what means to have a method that returns a value. Okay? you can return, so right here let me put a comment. So, right, double is the type of data that this method will return. Okay, you could have, whoops. Okay, so you could return all the different data types. You could return string, you can return a character, you can return an integer, you can return a double, you can return a float, right? Those are the things you can return from a method. Okay? So that's pretty much it, right? So what you need to know is you need to know what is it to return a value? Well, that's what it is. I just showed you. You need to know what is it to send values into a method, and I just showed you that too. Okay? And you also need to know what is a parameter, what's an argument, what is a void. So you already know all these different things. You also need to know what's a constructor, how you can send values into the constructor, and basically how to make different objects of the room type, which I showed you 3 of them. Okay? So that's basically what I want to tell you. Let's see if there's anything else. And again, the book uses this public business in front, so you can go in there and type public in front of all these different ones. You can say public in front of this, public. It's really not going to change a whole lot as far as we're concerned, so I'm not even going to go there. Okay? It really has to do if you have like multiple different classes and how the information from one class is accessed from another class. If you make things private, then the information in the class that's private is not visible from other classes. So it's a way for you to hide the information that's inside of the object. Okay? So reusing method names is called method overloading. So the example of a method overloading is, let's say I have a C3 method. Alright, so let's say I'm going to go in there, I'm going to say, alright, void C3, but just like that, right? And then in there I'm going to say, alright, let me just make up some other ones. Okay, so this one is just going to be equal to, I don't know, whatever, 11.1, then it's going to be 12.2, right? What is method overloading? That's right here. So this is method overload, which means using the same name for different methods. So it's allowed to use the same name for 2 different methods as long as they have different number of parameters. This one doesn't have anything in it. This one has a couple of them. So it's okay. Java's cool with that. Okay? How would it know which one am I using? Based on what values I'm giving it. So for example, where do I use C3? See, if I do C3 like this, right, it will know that I'm using this one, right, because I'm giving it 2 values. If I go in there and I'm going to do another one. So I'm going to go in there, I'm going to say, okay, hold on. Let's make a new, well, I'll leave it there. So I'm going to say, okay, CRoom dot C3, right, now it knows, right, knows to use the method which does not have any parameters, and parameters were the variables, right? So this one has 2 of them, this one has 1 of them, I mean none of them. Okay, now you would run into issues, and by the way, let me compile this thing. Okay, I'm going to compile again. It's happy, right? What I'm going to do now, though, is I'm going to try to mess with it. I'm going to go in there, I'm going to say, all right, hold on. 10.1. Okay, is there a method which has 1 parameter, one argument, 1 parameter? I have one that has 2, I have one that has 0, so how is it going to react if I give it 1? Like that. What is it telling you? No suitable method found. It's actually kind of nice telling you what's the prompt. Okay, other languages will just collapse on you. Okay, like C++ might just crash or whatever. Okay, so it's nice if you can get these error messages before before the program gets going. The more messages, the more error messages you get before the program is running, the easier for you will be to figure out what's wrong with the program. Because the worst thing that you could do is you have a program that's running and it's not working the way you want it, right? And that's what happens in C and C++ and a lot of these lower level languages. It's running and it's crashing, or it's running and it's not doing what you want it to do. So if you encounter these errors early, it's good. Okay? So that's a method overload, right? So this thing that I just did, right? This here, this is bad. You can't do that. So you have to do it. You have to give it as many arguments as there are parameters. So we had a C3 with zero parameters. You're gonna call a method which has 0 arguments, or you're sending zero values into it. So that's the method overloading that this chapter talks about. Passing a reference, that's what this was. Okay. Oh, so important thing is, let's say you could have methods that are calling each other. So let's say, for example, when I have some method called void some method, right? And in it, I'm calling some other method, and I'm sending 2 argument values, right? By the way, the values that I'm sending in, they don't have to be just values per se. You could use variables, because the variables store values into them, so you can send the variables in. Okay, they're still called arguments. Okay, and now this is your method here, some other method which receives 2 parameters. But what I want to point out is this. So here, argument 1 is equal to 1. Here, argument 2 is equal to 2. Right? I'm sending them over, and then here what I'm doing is I'm changing the parameter values. Parameter 1 is equal to 2, parameter 2 is equal to 4. By changing these here, I am not changing these arguments. Okay? It has no effect on them whatsoever. So just know that. So returning a single value, I showed you how you can return a whole bunch of things, right? This is an example of how you can return an integer. Right, method development arguments, I told you that. Swapping values. All right, so swapping values, this is a good one. So before I even get into a method, let's say I have something like this. I have, all right, let's say I have an int num1, and I have num1 is equal to 10, and I have num2, which is equal to 20. Okay, what I want to do is want to swap their values so that num1 is equal to 20 and num2 is equal to 10. How do I do it? If I go in there and I do, okay, num1 is equal to num2, what's going to happen? We're going to have num1 is equal to 20 and num2 is equal to 20. So I just lost the 10. 10's gone. Okay? If I go and do it the other way around, if I do instead of this, let's say I'm going to go in there, I'm going to say, all right, num2 is equal to num1. Okay, what's going to happen is num2 is equal to 10 and num1 is equal to 10. So they're both equal to 10. I lost the 20. Okay, so what am I going to do? I can do it either way, right? But what I'm going to do is, let's go with the second one. So before I lose my value that's stored inside num2, why don't I just make another variable? I'll call it temp. I can call it whatever I want. All right, and I'm going to say, all right, temp is equal to num2. So now temp is equal to, what was num2? 20. All right, the 20 is stored somewhere. Num2 is equal to num1, so now they're both equal to 10. And I'm going to say, okay, num1 is equal to temp. So now num2 is equal to 10 and num1 is equal to 20. I swap their values. Okay? So that's the easier one. This chapter talks about things like, how am I going to swap the values of different rooms? Right? So let's say, for example, we had different rooms. One with length, let's say this. Let's say I want to do this. And that's actually one of the harder exercises in this whole book, I think. Because if you don't understand objects and how we can pass values into them, it might not make sense. So let's do this. So I'm going to have a I'm going to make a new room. Right? I'm going to make a couple rooms. Okay, two new ones. What? So this and this. So I'm going to call this one room X. I'm going to call this room Y. Okay, and these two values that I'm sending in were the width and the length. So I'm going to go with length, right? Because it's easier to type. Because that other one was weird. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to make this one 100. And I'm going to make this one 200. Okay? So these are the lengths of the rooms. Alright? This piece here is length. Okay? But what I want to do is I want to swap the lengths between the two rooms. And I want to do something like this. I want to do it like that. I want to say, alright, X room dot swap, and I'm going to send in the whole other room, Y room. Okay? And before I do this, I'm going to add an extra little method in there. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to say, all right, hold on. I'm going to make a method that returns the length first. So I'm going to say, all right, double return length, just like that. And what this thing is going to do is it's just going to return the length, just like that. That's it. That's all it does. Okay. And then I'm going to make another method that changes the length. All right. I'm going to go void, because it's not going to return anything, change length, and it's going to take a double of a new length. I'll call it new length, like that. Okay? And then in there, I'm going to say, okay, the length is equal to my new length. Again, the length is this, which is just the property of the room, and that's what I'm changing and returning. Okay, but by the way, every object that you create should have its own method so that you can look at the individual properties and change the individual properties, just like I'm showing you here. Okay, so let's have a look at how I'm going to do this. So I'm going to use my return length and my change length to swap values. And here's my swap method. I'm going to say void. So this is going to be a method that swaps the values of two room objects. Okay, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to say, all right, void swap, because it's not going to return anything. And now this thing is going to take, this gets weird, we're going to do room other. I'm going to call it other room. Okay, so unlike so far we've been sending over parameters of the basic data types, right? So what I'm doing here is I'm sending a parameter. Alright, so I'm sending a parameter of the room type. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, alright, this is my method here on the bottom, X room swap Y room. Okay, so I'm sending over this room right here as a parameter. So this method right here, other refers to what's the room name again? Y room. Y room. Okay? And then I'm going to do this. And let me just put this a little bit under so it doesn't look weird with different colors. Alright. So it goes like this. I'm going to say, alright, this room, this length, okay? And that's another new thing that you're seeing for the first time. What is this? This refers to, what's the other one? X room. So the one that's calling it is this. It's this method which calls, xroom refers, this refers to the object which calls the method. So this swap method belongs to this one, right? The object it's calling it is the this, okay? And by the way, this is a very common thing. You're going to see it across all kinds of different languages, okay? So this is the purpose of a this. It refers to the object which calls the thing, okay? So this length is equal to my other dot get, what do I call it? Return length. Return length. Okay? So remember, other is the other room, is the white room. This is this room. And I'm going to change it. But just like I did earlier with the little swap business that I showed you, I can just say, okay, wait, one of them is equal to the other. I have to use a temp to store the value that I'm changing. So I'm going to go back in there. I'm going to say, all right, hold on. Before I do this, I'm going to say temp, or double temp. Okay, temp is equal to this length. Okay, now I stored the value that's inside this length, which refers to the x room, right? And then the next thing I'm going to do is, then I'm saying, okay, this room or x room, the length of x room is equal to the other room or the y room. And then I'm going to say, okay, well then, the other dot change length is, and I'm going to send in my temp. Is that right? Yeah. And that's it. Okay? So if everything is done correctly, I should be able to see values change. So I'm going to go in there, I'm going to say, okay, show the values. I'm going to say xroom dot L, right? And I'm going to do yroom dot L, right? So I should do it actually before and after. So I'm going to do it one time here before I swap. Right? I'm going to do it right after I created them. Okay? So first you're going to see that x room is 1 and 100, y room is 10 and 200, right? And then as soon as I do it again, you're going to see the values swapped, hopefully. Okay? So we'll go back to the terminal, compile, hopefully it works. No, doesn't like it. What I do, forgot semicolon, where? Line 120, go to my line 120. Forgot a semicolon, throw it, save it, compile. Now it's happy. Run it. Whoops. Run it. Okay, so you see right here, it started as 100 and 200, but then I swapped the values and it's now 200 and 100. Okay, so you're going to have one exercise that asks you to create, I think, names. So you have like a person object which has a name in it, and then you're going to swap the names of one person and another person. And you're going to use this thing that I just showed you. Okay? Questions? You all look excited? So let's see classification of variables, all that stuff I already explained. Oh, one more kind of a variable, final. Final is like a constant. It's a variable that's never going to change its value. If you try to change it, it will give you an error. So if you want some kind of a variable that never changes, you put final in front of it, and that's it. Okay? Scope and visibility. All right, I got to tell you about the scope and visibility. Okay, so scope refers to where the variable can be used. Okay, so if I have an instance variable which is declared outside of all the other methods, these variables can be used everywhere. Just like you're seeing right here, I can use with here and then everywhere. I can use it everywhere throughout my object. But look at this variable right here, third. Right? Let me try to change it. I'm going to go in here and we'll say, okay, third is equal to 3. Okay, let's see if the Java likes this thing. Save it, right? Whoops, save, and try to compile. Oops, can't find symbol, something about variable third. Why is that bad? Because this is a local variable. So the scope, where did I have it? Right here, right? So a local variable is declared inside of a method. Local variable is declared, okay, another, all right, same thing twice. All right, let me add it again. So the scope of a local variable is only the method where it was declared. And then scope means where it can be used. So if I declared it here, it can only be used here. If I can't go and try to use it there, otherwise, right, can't use third here because it was declared inside the C2 method, and the scope of third is only the C2 method. Okay, so it can only be used inside of the C2 method. That's what that is talking. That's what this here is talking about. Okay, that's the main thing you need to know. Okay, yeah, all this other business about public, private, protected, I'm not even going to tell you much about it, so not to confuse you. Creating objects, you already know how to create objects. We made a whole bunch of rooms. That's how you make the objects. And new is just referred to as the dynamic memory allocation operator. All right? So that's your terminology for this week. Okay? Questions? We're good? All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this, and I'm going to upload it for today, and also I'm going to upload the video, and hopefully that'll do the job for you. Okay? So if you want to get started on any of these, work on them, or you want to take off, it's up to you. Just let me know. So that's it.